Lockdown, of course, also having a huge impact. We saw how services have been disrupted, supplies were disrupted, but we have also seen how the government has worked with industry to bring back normalcy. But then you also have horrific stories of the migrant labor at borders, stranded, walking 40, 50, 100 kilometers with their belongings. You also get to hear about what happened in Nizamuddin as well as Delhi, and now Mumbai resorting to zoning. Joining me to talk about the lockdown and what it means for one very essential service, pharmaceuticals, Ananth Narayanan from Medlife joining us. Ananth, good evening. Always a pleasure talking to you. Nayantara Rai here in New Delhi. I'd like to apologize to you because last week when we had to have you on the show, perils of live television, we're working from home, it didn't work out. But thank you again for taking time out of your schedule. You know, every day there is probably a new thing that you have to grapple at. Such an important business sector you're in, delivering medicines. It's an essential commodity. How's life been the last couple of days?
So, Nayantara, thank you for having me. I think steady increase is the way I would say it. So, if you take our orders, we are back to about 45% of the deliveries that we used to do. Right. As I told you the last time, we had sort of gone down to almost 20% of the deliveries. Now we're back to 45 to 50% of deliveries, which I think is actually a big step up. Our attendance across our fulfillment centers, as well as our service delivery agents, is about 50%. So half the people have come back to work, and we're sort of doing roughly half the deliveries. We are now active, Nayantara, in about 25 cities. Where we have fulfillment centers and we're managed to start operations even if they're partial. We're hoping that in the next day or two, across our partner network, which is Delivery, Ecom Express, Shadowfax, and many others, we can start our services again for about 9,000 PIN codes in India. But we're hoping that that can start to happen hopefully by tomorrow. But it's coming back, but still slow. We're at half of what we used to be. But I think on the ground, things are starting to improve. I think the real thing is to get employees back, make them feel secure, and have them come back and start operating.
No, it's amazing. 1 week down and you're back at 50% almost. But Ananth, you know what I want to also ask you and how you're dealing with this. So far, there's been enough supply. You've got pharmaceuticals as an essential commodity. But going forward, with all the rumors, there may be, and we don't know if it'll happen, but there is plenty of rumor mongering, right? That will we see the lockdown being extended? People are fearing that, if it's being increased in the US, Japan is talking about it. Look what's happening in the UK. How can it not happen here? There will be hoarding. How are you dealing with that? And I'm not talking about vitamins and all of that. I'm talking about essential drugs. How are you dealing with that? A diabetic is probably saying, I must have supply for 2-3 months. A heart patient will say, I must have medicine for 3 months. The essential drugs, the life-saving drugs, are they enough in supply?
Yeah, so Nayantara, I think we spoke about this last time. I think the first mile is still not sorted out. I think we still need to figure out the supply chain to get medicines from pharma companies into our warehouses. It has started partially. So we have it in Delhi, we have it in Bombay, we have it in Bangalore. But I think in the smaller cities, to get to actually Calcutta, Chennai, which are not smaller, but to get to them, I think we've still had difficulties, right? So we're still sorting it out. I'm hoping that in the next 1 week, the supply chains there start to improve. I think that's one point to make. Second is, I think hand sanitizers, masks, and even sort of core central medicines like you talked about. We have restricted the amount of bulk ordering that an individual customer can do. So you can order only X number and not more than that to make sure that we can have as wide an access to our customers as we possibly can. But the first mile problem still needs to be solved, Nayantara. I think not there yet in terms of solution. I think hopefully a week from now, I hope it gets better. But so far, by the way, we are working with Blue Dart and making sure that our supplies reach from our main warehouses to our fulfillment centers, but only in the main cities so far.
But even Blue Dart is having its own share of problems, right? Like these are just market checks, unconfirmed. Blue Dart for delivering a product first had a surcharge. Now it has an emergency surcharge. I don't know what it does to the whole arithmetic of running a business or or for the patient who's ordering the medicine and you are relying on Blue Dart. But having said that, Ananth, when you talk to the pharmaceutical companies, when you're trying to still get the medicines to your warehouses, what's the sense that you get? While you have this bigger problem of figuring out the solution, the second problem, do they have enough of it? Will they be able to continue to supply to you? Will they have packaging that's going to last, for example?
So, Nayantara, great question. My sense is, as I talk to pharma companies, over the next 30, 45 days, I think there will be no problem with supplies. I think as this extends further, if for example, we extend this and sort of day zero of being COVID-free is June, July, then I think we will have to work, the government and the pharma companies will have to work to make sure there's enough API, enough packaging, all of that, right? But I think for the next month, month and a half, at least we don't see an issue. And I think it will be okay. It is still more a supply chain problem. But if it extends beyond that, Nayantara, then I think we will have to work collaboratively with the pharma company and the government to make sure that there is local availability in India, right? And I think that's really, really important. I think the two other things I wanted to comment. One is, I think it's been wonderful to sort of work with partner companies. I see a Zomato rider on the screen as we speak. So we're partnering up with multiple companies to see if they can actually help us deliver. And that's been very, very helpful for us. Other startups who have capacity, we're actually tying up with. And I think there's a good startup ecosystem that's working together to make sure that deliveries actually happen for things like essentials. So I wanted to call that out because I think that's working really, really well. The second thing I wanted to call out is, at least at Medlife, we are going out of the way to ensure the safety of our staff. We're treating the fulfillment centers almost like hospitals in the sense we are sanitizing them every 3 hours. Apart from the usual masks, hand sanitizers, and infrared thermometers, we also have a doctor assigned to every fulfillment centers. We have a protocol for making sure that people feel safe. We're also arranging for transportation, for accommodation, and for food for many of our employees to make sure that people actually do come. And I think we need to do all of that to encourage people to come back to work, because only then can we actually do delivery of essential services.
Hi Ananth, sorry about the bad line. You were saying that you do believe the supplies are there, that they'll figure out the problem very soon. Problem will only arise if you go into July. But like I said, every day the situation is changing. While we might be still talking about stage 3, the government maintains there is no community spread as yet. In Mumbai, the news has just come in, they're going to attempt zoning, right? Where you're going to look at zoning of quarantined patients and all of that. Isn't that going to become more difficult because they will be quarantined, they will be in zones where no entry exits are going to be allowed, but they're going to need medicines, they're going to need food, they're going to need water.
Absolutely, Nayantara. I think great point. I wanted to call out a couple of things. One thing that I've been hugely encouraged by is how startups are starting to work together to ensure delivery of these, right? So whether it's partnerships with Zomato, with MyGate, with all of these guys, so that we can work together to ensure that we do deliveries. We're also trying to see if we can do mass deliveries into societies so that it sort of is one entry exit and you consolidate the orders, right? So we're trying very many different things. I think one thing which is very positive for me is the amount of cooperation and collaboration that's happening across the startup ecosystem, where people with excess capacity are willing to lend the capacity to folks like us who have a lot of orders that are for essentials that need to get delivered. So I think I see that happening, and I think that could be one way to solve the problem. The other thing, Nayantara, that I think is really important is I think making sure that the safety of our employees is really top class. I think at Medlife, we are going out of the way. In addition to sort of masks, infrared thermometers, constant sanitization of the warehouses, we're also, by the way, have a doctor for every one of our fulfillment centers, which I think makes sure that people can actually immediately call a doctor. We also have protocols in place to ensure that they actually have food, accommodation, and transportation, especially if they're migrant, right, in terms of the fulfillment centers. So we're trying to do all of that in a bid to increase confidence, because while we need to contain the coronavirus, and I fully appreciate what everybody is doing, we also need to make sure essential services continue for as long as possible so that we don't have panic and we get all of these through, right? So that's what we're attempting to do and balance, right? And that needs to happen sooner than later.
Absolutely right, and the only way you can actually do it is to have social distancing, have isolation, whether it's self or whether it's ordered by the government, and all of that. But Ananth, before I let you go, you preempted what was going to be my final question to you. I do live in the National Capital Region, so I do hear about how Medlife has worked with the likes of Zomato, I believe Make My Trip, Maruti, everyone is pitching in, all of that. But I don't want to talk about it. This is also a moment where we need to applaud all of you for rising to the occasion. So you do that. You tell the viewers what you're doing with your industry peers.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say, look, our goal for all our viewers and all our customers is to try and get you medicines and diagnostic services as quickly to you as we possibly can. I would only request that please bear with us. We're working at the forefront. There are lots of delays. This is not our usual customer service. So we are trying to make sure that we get through things to you. And second, I just wanted to say, I think as a startup ecosystem, I feel incredibly privileged to be part of this ecosystem that is so into helping one another. And I think, therefore, a big hats off to all of the startup ecosystem, because I think we are coming together in this time of need and working together to make sure that our customers are impacted the least. So a big kudos, I think, to the entire startup ecosystem, of which we also are a part.
Right. And kudos to all of you. You're all literally on the streets, making sure that we are all safe, that we all get access to medicines. And, Ananth, I was hoping you'll talk about what your industry peers are also doing, because you guys are getting money together. You're making sure also that the underprivileged, those who can't take food for granted, you're actually feeding them as well.
Absolutely, Nayantara. So 3 other things apart from just doing the deliveries. One is, I think there is a group of people working through how do we actually figure out both testing, scaling, all of that, right? COVID tests, how do we actually use technology? There's a second group that's actually putting funding together to basically say, how do we make this happen? In fact, I'm also on the, not startup, but I'm on the Marico board, which is set up from a Marico Innovation Center, a prize money for innovations in ventilator design and so on. So I think there's a lot of both money and innovation that we're trying to do. And third is, I think each of us, and not just Medlife, but every one of the startups is starting to help in communities. We have folks who are actually, Nayantara, in your city, in Delhi, who work at our call center and others, who are organizing community kitchens and making sure they're feeding migrant workers. So I think hats off to everybody, not just people who are working on the front line, but I think including people, everyone in the startup ecosystem is trying to contribute back in whatever way it's possible, whether with money, with technology, but also of their own time, to make sure that we can go back and give to community. And I think Medlife is no exception. We're doing it too, but so are a bunch of terrific startup founders. So I think we're doing all 3 of it, and we're very excited by it. And it's great to see.
And once again, thank you for all that you all are doing, for making us all safer, for making India better. We all have one goal, and that is to beat coronavirus. So thank you so much for doing that, and thank you, Ananth, for being patient, for being part of Startup Central. We look forward to many more interactions. The idea is to have folks like you who are making a difference, to also encourage others to rise to the occasion, so together India can rise together. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a short commercial break. Stay tuned. We've got a lot lined up for you on the other side. Don't hit that button on your remote.